All right, everyone, I think that we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Cristina Gonzalez, and I'm on the board of the League of Women Voters of Santa Maria Valley. Welcome to our Higher Education Forum. I want to tell you a little bit about the League and then about the awesome panelists that we have here today to discuss issues around higher education. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation in government. We influence public policy through education and advocacy, but we don't support political parties or candidates. And so we present education. We provide unbiased, nonpartisan information about issues, elections, voting, the voting process, and then after our studies, we advocate for or against based on our positions in the public interest. We are here today to talk about higher education. The League of Women Voters is conducting a study on higher education, and we have over 40 local leagues that will be doing research and collecting data to help us develop a policy statement that will allow the California leagues to develop both a pro and a con on issues impacting higher education in our state. And so from now until May, the local league will be gathering information, including conducting interviews and asking agencies for local data, so keep an eye out for our call. And today we kick off the study with an higher education forum on accessibility and affordability. And actually just want to remind everyone, if you are interested in learning more about the League, we have some materials in the table back there, as well as some of our panelists have brought materials as well. And you can find us online at lwvsm.org or on Facebook. So now the speakers today will be talking about accessibility and affordability. They will be Cora from the Guadalupe Union School District, the superintendent. Then Superintendent Dr. Mark Richardson from Santa Maria Joint Union High School District. Then it will be followed by Dr. Kevin Walthers, who is the president of Allen Hancock College. Then we'll be hearing from Carla Castillo, who is from State Senator Hanna-Beth Jackson's office. And last but certainly not least, we'll be hearing from Quianna Carter, who's a former Allen Hancock College student body government on the board of directors and the director of academic affairs. So the way that the panel is going to work, we've asked each speaker to speak for about 10 minutes on their work and what they see are the issues around accessibility and affordability of higher education. Then we will have one of our league members that's keeping track of time. And throughout the process, we have some note cards that if anyone has any questions, feel free to write them down on the note cards. We'll take a short break and collect those note cards, and then we'll begin the question and answer section. It will be moderated. Any questions or comments by anyone? No? Okay. Then let's begin. If we could hear first from Cora, the Guadalupe Union School District Superintendent.
Thanks, Cristina. A couple different things I want to say is, one, thank you very much to Virginia Souza for inviting me here today. My hope is that we can share information you can take with you and help kids go to college, because that's the bottom line. So for myself, this is my 32nd year in education. I started in Pennsylvania, taught 3 years there. Came out without a job, landed in the town of Orchid, and Jack Garvin hired me, and I was a teacher there for 8 years. Jumped to Santa Maria Bonita as an assistant principal for 2, then a principal for 14 years, and now this is my 5th year out in Guadalupe as superintendent. And I always say that Guadalupe is a wonderful, quaint town with a ton of potential, and part of my job is to get the youngsters out there believing that, yes, they can and will go to college no matter what anybody tells them. That's my belief. So I'll start with a couple different things, and when I think about accessibility and affordability, I went on to areavibes.com, and you can look up cities, and they talk about their education, housing, and everything else. And on the education level achieved in Guadalupe, there's and you can do this for any town, any city. So it says percentage completed 8th grade. Now, how accurate this is, I'm not exactly sure, but it says 47%. In California, the average is 80%. So about half. It jumps to completed high school, and I'm still thinking this is low, but 42%. The average in California is 78%. Completed some college, 30%, California, 60%. So it's about half. But as you start getting into the higher degrees, it starts getting smaller, and that's where the big gap comes in. Completed associate degree, 11%, Guadalupe, 38%, state of California. Bachelor's, 5%, Guadalupe, 30% the state. Completed master's, 1%, 11% California. And then it goes down to completed doctorate degree, 0%, and then 1.5% in the state of California. So as long as I'm out there, as I mentioned before, my goal is you got to start early. I've always said, think about my own daughters, it's never too early to start telling children that, yes, they can and will go to college. And I think the students out there, or children, they are so fortunate to have just 8 miles away Allen Hancock College. I think all of us in this room know how fortunate everyone is, locally, kids, that we have such a great college here. I'm going to share, as I came walking in, getting ready to come on in here, there's students hanging outside. I'm sure you saw them outside the Student Center. And I'm looking, and I see this group of 5 students. They're kind of looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and all of a sudden I see 2 of them that look familiar. So because this is my 32nd year in education, and I've been in this area for so long, they were my students from Tommy Kuntz Junior High School, and I was a principal there. So as soon as I made a turn to start going towards them, they got excited, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity to start talking to them a little bit. So I sat down, and they said, what are you doing here, Mr. Cora? And I told them I'm coming in to speak a little bit. And so I just started asking questions, and I said, tell me a little bit about why you chose this school, why you even chose college to begin with. And they gave so much credit, and I told Dr. Richarson this as we met earlier, so they gave so much credit to the high school counselors. Almost every question I asked them, they're like, high school counselor, high school counselor, high school counselor. And then Dr. Richardson told me don't steal his material, because I'm sure he's going to talk about that.
And he did anyway.
But it was amazing to hear how often they kept answering the high school counselors made such a difference. For me at my level, at the elementary level, because I'm the only one up here K through 8, it's important that we have the AVID program, Advancement via Individualized Determination. We have it school-wide at both of our schools. AVID promotes college readiness. It promotes college accessibility. It tells students, yes, you can, anybody can go to college. I'm a first-generation college graduate from my family, but I still remember there always has to be somebody who kind of promotes that. And it was my father who, as I was growing up playing on the streets and running around with my friends, he always kept saying, education is the key. He kept repeating it over and over again, sinking it into my head. So as a superintendent out there, we try as often as I can, and the rest of us too, to tell parents, talk to your kids about college, not will you go, where will you go? That's the only question. Where will you go? Cal Poly? Will you go to Allen Hancock College, UCSB? Put that in their heads early. I have what's called Coffee with the Superintendent 4 times a year. It's an open forum. Parents are invited to come. And I usually start off with a topic, but then after that, I just open up to questions. And Kevin Walthers showed up last year with Board President Larry Lahr. And I'd love to have Dr. Walthers come back again, because the parents forgot I was even there. All the questions and all the time was spent on the college in Hancock. So when I think about accessibility, I've got to make sure that parents out in Guadalupe know that, one, there is a place for their children to go, and more importantly, that it's affordable. I think sometimes parents say, well, college, public education at the high school, junior high, elementary, that's free. I can't go to college. I think it's a matter of educating them and providing them the information, which, Dr. Walthers, I don't know if you remember, you gave one statistic that totally, I had no idea. Because I think one of the questions was, how much does it cost, or how much will it cost for me as a family, and we don't really have that money. And I'm going to throw this out from the top of my head, see how close I am, where I believe you and Mr. Lahr said something about like 70-some% of the students that go here are either fully or half paid for. Am I somewhat close?
70%. So now he's still in my maturity.
when you get to, but Dr. Walters said that, and he threw me off, and I thought, I had no idea that many students can come to Allen Hancock College for either free or mostly paid for. So I've been spreading that word, and if you didn't know that, isn't that something? 70% of the students that go here, either free or half paid for. So there's money out there, but it's a matter of educating parents that, yes, your child should go to college, and there's a lot of different ways to get them there. And there can be many more first-generation students going to college just like I did. So that's, I try not to talk much. I don't know if that's 10 minutes or not, but I'll answer questions later. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Cora. All right. So up next, we'd like to hear from Superintendent of Santa Maria Joint Union High School District, Dr. Mark Richardson.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone here today. I also appreciate being invited to be part of this group. I thought I would begin by just sharing a few statistics for you today. And I think it will be eye-opening when we talk about accessibility and preparing kids for a college education. In 1980, there were 4.1 million students, public school students in the state of California. Today, there's 6.2 million. In 1980, we had 326,000 English learners. That was 7% of the population. Today, our English learner population is 1.4 million, or 22% of the population. Special needs students, we had 8% in 1980, and today that percentage is 10%. 678,000 students in the state of California have special needs. Also, I think another statistic that's relevant to today is that the free and reduced lunch population, which low socioeconomic kids are about 60% of the population of kids going to public education K through 12 today. So I use 1980 because that's the year I graduated from high school, so that makes me 54 if you're trying to do the math. But we oftentimes think about our own personal experience, and then we apply that to a current situation. And I think what's important to understand is that times have changed. And so as an educational institution, it's important for us to change with the times, because we know we have a population of students that are much more needy today than they were back in 1980. And we're trying to take a group of kids that typically struggle with the standard support mechanisms that I grew up with, maybe all of us here grew up with, and we try to apply our own experience to a current situation, and sometimes that doesn't work. In the Santa Maria Joint Union High School District, we have 7,900 students. 2,150 of those students are English learners. That's 27% of our population. We have 5,800 students that are free and reduced lunch students. So that's 74% of our population. So we know that. We know that about our population. And I think what's important for us in education to do is to recognize those facts and then to try to address those facts so that we can help kids to achieve. We know that the hurdles are much higher today, and there are many more of them for kids that we educate. And so what's important for us is to invest in a strategic way, in a very well-planned way, in programs that will help our students to achieve. If we know that we have this very large percentage of English learners, then it makes sense we invest in an English learner program that's going to help kids to succeed, right? If we know we have kids that are not getting the message at home about going to college and the things that you need to do to get there, then we have to bring that message to the kids. If they don't get it from us, they're not going to get it. That's the way it works. And so our emphasis has really been on, number one, identifying the issues that we have, and then number two, really strategically planning ways to address these issues with our students in school. So I left on the table over there a copy of our strategic plan in the district, and you're happy you can take that home and read it at your leisure. I try not to distribute anything when I'm talking because everybody looks at it and they don't listen, right? That's the old teacher trick, right? But what we try to do is identify these areas that we know we need to focus on, and we need to put resources at them as early as we possibly can, and provide quality resources for the kids to be successful. So on our level, we look at that through our strategic planning efforts, but we also look at that through the new funding model in the state for education, the local control funding formula, and target resources in those areas that our kids are in dire need of help. In our district, what that means for us, and Ed mentioned this earlier, is an emphasis on academic counseling and getting our kids with certificated counselors that can help guide students through this academic maze sometimes that they have to go through. In our district, through this funding formula, we've invested in 18 counselors in our district. Last couple of years, we were really staffed on a ratio of one counselor for the entire school. For school counselors, we didn't really have school counselors. We had some technicians that did a great job working with kids, but we feel like if we want to have a certificated person teach our kids English and a certificated person teach our kids math, and I want to go to a doctor that has a certificate in medicine, that I want kids having, or we want kids having advice given to them about college by certificated people that have been trained in that area. We've also invested in some early outreach work with UC Santa Barbara through EAOP counseling, and we think that that's going to be a very beneficial thing on our campuses, because we have a person there that's solely targeting students that are close to obtaining A through G certification and having the opportunity to apply and get accepted into college. I think the other piece for us, and there's a couple more, is this seamless integration with higher education is the way I put it. We all have different districts and we all work in different districts, but really for us it's all about becoming one virtual district for the Santa Maria Valley. We are partnering with Hancock on a number of different levels. We partner with our feeder school districts on a number of different levels, because the kids that come from Ed come to us, and the kids that go to Kevin come from us, and so it makes sense for us to work together on that. And so that entails things like information sharing with our students, working with the guidance staff here at Hancock, making sure that we're connected up and getting feedback. It's not just us sharing information with Hancock, but we want to hear back from Hancock about how do our kids do when they came here? What do we need to tune up on our end to make it easier for our students? Exposure to the campus, and Ed mentioned this earlier, nothing better than getting kids to come over here and see the world for what it is, and have an opportunity to walk around and to kind of sample that college life. I think another big thing that we've stepped off with this year is a pilot program for concurrent enrollment classes, bringing those classes onto our campus, giving our students the opportunity to take a college class. I've been involved in these programs before, and they've been very successful. And I really think that part of that with students and the success of concurrent programs is really about, when a kid takes a college class, it's the start of something. When they take an advanced level or an AP level class at high school, those are all good classes, and I think they're very important for kids. But oftentimes, it's the end of their high school career when they take those classes on. I like the idea of just tweaking that mindset and saying to a kid, here, this is where you could be. You can take this class. You can be successful. It's transferable anywhere. And if you're successful in that, you can go on to higher education, and I think it's a great sampling for the student. The other thing in our district that we recognized is that one of the things that our students struggle with is access to technology. And I could give you quite a few statistics related to that, but our district is very interested in connecting up kids with technology and giving them the opportunity to have what we call a one-to-world device, not a one-to-one device, but a one-to-world device. We also believe that technology gives our kids a great resource in terms of taking advantage of software programs like Career Cruising, filling out their FAFSA form at home with their parents. I mean, doing those kinds of things that many of us take for granted. You know, I think about it in terms of my own kids, as Ed mentioned. You know, my kids have always had a computer that they could access. And when they came home to do their homework, if they needed it, they had it. Well, that's not the case for most of the kids that we serve. And that really gave my kids a leg up. Well, why not give all of our kids a leg up and give them the opportunity to experience that technology? And then finally, I'll wrap it up before I get the 1-minute sign. As Ed mentioned earlier, I think targeted programs that address very specifically what you're trying to do, like AVID, this advancement via individual determination, as Ed mentioned, I think it's more than just a class for a kid. It's actually walking the student through the process of becoming college eligible, filling out applications, doing written statements for application, and walking them right down that path. Because as we know, and we talked about earlier, kids don't have somebody to walk them down that path. So if we don't engage with them, then they're not going to get there. And as Ed mentioned earlier, we too have expanded our AVID programs at our sites. We want kids to get those A through G courses met and be eligible and go on to four-year university. So I guess in summation, I would say I think today it's important that we recognize that where our students are and the kinds of resources they need to be successful in the world that we want to see going forward. And I'm confident that as a district and as a virtual district, that all of us can put our collective minds together to work at making this happen for our kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Richardson. Now if we could hear from Allen Hancock College President, Dr. Kevin Walthers.
Thanks. Thank you all for coming. We're happy you're here. You all got parking passes. I got one. Did you? Okay, that's good. You know, we've got, when we talk about accessibility, there you kind of see the pathway exactly of how the students are getting here. And one of the things that's happened in the past and still happens around the country and around California is we get students who need remediation, and so I blame Mark. Mark says, "Don't blame me. Talk to Ed," and it kind of goes down the list. And we've kind of set that aside here. We're not worried about that. We're worried about helping the students wherever they are. And when I went out to Guadalupe and we talked to the parents, and we were able to tell them when the community college system started charging fees for classes, they also implemented a program called the Board of Governors Waiver, and it waives the fees for needy students. So we were able to tell parents in Guadalupe, if your kid comes, we'll get them into class, and we have money to help them go to school. And it doesn't matter. We're not going to ask what your immigration status is. We're not going to ask any of those questions. The Board of Governors waivers for any student in California, and so about 70% of our students are already getting that, and that waives all of their fees with the exception of the health fee, which is like $25, and that gives them then access to health services. The sticky part, though, is the Board of Governors waiver doesn't cover the cost of books. But even with that, if you compare, and I'll have Carmen, she came with some flyers I forgot to bring out. We'll pass these out in a minute because Mark had a good point. We don't want everybody reading that. But we actually did a comparison that we passed out to all the high schools, to all the seniors last year, that talked about what it costs to go to an associate's granting college in Santa Barbara County. And if you compare us to the other schools, which is like Santa Barbara Business College, Loras College, and those kind of places, we are pennies on the dollar for an accredited program that transfers anywhere. You can go to those schools and pay a whole lot more. You don't get the automatic transfer to CSU. You're not eligible for the Board of Governors waiver. We're actually making that case. And even when you add in the books, once you do the net cost of that, it comes out to about $760 a year for a student to attend Hancock College. And you can compare that to, I got to put my glasses on to do the comparison, but if you go to Santa Barbara Business College or Loras College, you're paying either $9,300 or $7,600 for the exact same degree program, except for ours is actually transferable. One of the things we've been doing to help accessibility is we're actually talking to we actually have regular meetings with the counselors for every district in our area. So it was huge that Mark and the board at the Santa Maria High School District really stepped up and put counselors in there, because now those counselors come and meet with our counselors and we get them right through. And then when Mark says we want to know how our students are doing, we meet twice a year and we provide data back to each high school that says, here's how many of your students came to Hancock, here's what their grades are, here's how they're doing, and here's how they're progressing. So the high schools can look at that and say, oh, things we can do better. One of the great things that came out of that meeting is we now pass out, we actually receive from Santa Maria District the transcripts of every single high school graduate. So when a student comes here and we say, wow, you didn't test into college level math, they can say, I had all the prerequisites at Rigetti. And we can just pull their transcript up. Before, we had to send them back over to the district, get your transcript, bring it back, we'll check it off. Now we've got a file, that transcript's already there, and we can look at their transcript and say, you've completed all these classes, and we'll give you a waiver into the college level math program. When we talk to parents and high school students, the real thing we're doing, and Mark and I have had preliminary conversations about how we can make those A to G requirements mean something at Hancock. A to G requirements being the requirements that are required to get you to CSU UC. They're not as important at the community college level, but we're actually working on ways we can make that valuable to a student who comes to Hancock, because it's important that those students are ready for college. And the way you get ready for college, even if you're coming to Hancock, is 4 years of math, 4 years of English, 4 years of science. Because when you take that senior year off, or you take 2 years off from math, you forget how to do it. And I could walk you, when we're done, I could walk you by where we teach the math classes. I like to poke my head in and look at the board and say, well, I used to know how to do that. I remember a day where I could do that, but I don't know how to do it anymore. And that's what happens to our students when they show up 2 years out. Even more importantly, when our veterans show up 2 years out of high school and 4 years out of the military, they're really testing into some low levels. So we're doing several things to address that. With our writing classes, we're doing intensive 2-week writing boot camps, so that students, when we did that, we had 140 students take this 2-week boot camp, and 96% of them actually retested and tested into a higher level of English just by doing that 2 weeks of getting that remediation so they would not do the test. Now the next step of that is we got to see how they do the semester to make sure that they actually perform well, but that's important to us. When we talk about affordability, though, the national conversation always goes to the wrong place. It always talks about tuition, and it's not tuition. Tuition is the problem the parents see, but tuition is not the cost of education. The cost of education is the total cost that it takes to educate a student. And if you look at how much is spent per student at the UCs, it's about, I'm going to flip down to my slide here. They're spending about $24,000 a student at UCs. That's state funds plus tuition plus any other local revenue. At Cal State, they're spending just over $13,000, and at California Community College, it costs about $6,500 to educate a student. So you see, that's the total cost. The difference becomes in the tuition, and the unseen part of why tuition is going up at state institutions in every single state where tuition is going up is because the state's divesting from public education. The state is no longer providing funds for higher education. And if you go back just to 2005, across the country, net tuition, the amount that students and parents paid, was 32% of what it cost to educate a student. Today, 42.7%. It's gone up that much just since 2005. If you go back, you graduated in 1980? Wow.
I know.
Can you guys believe that? Wow. If you go back to when we were in college, I went to the University of Texas. They tripled tuition the year before I got there, and so I had to pay $12 a unit to go to the University of Texas. If you accelerated that for inflation to today, that it would be somewhere around $140 a unit. It costs almost $10,000 a semester to the University of Texas now. And it was 85% of the cost of an undergraduate education there was paid for by the state. And the students picked up the tab. And that has completely shifted in the last 30 years. And the recession just accelerated that. We saw it in California. We saw it in the California community colleges during the budget cuts when the legislature, sorry, Joyce. I know their boss wasn't for this, but the legislature cut $400 million out of the community college budget, and they said, "Don't worry, we're going to raise the fees and put $100 million back." Well, that's just a tax on community college students to pay for general government. I mean, that's a fee to come to college essentially becomes a tax so that they can pay for the other parts of state government. And when you start to do that, it really has a disproportionate impact on lower income students. And we're seeing, 2 out of every 3 students that will turn college age in this county over the next 15 years are Latino students. And they're coming from, parents that didn't go to college and have limited means. And that makes it very difficult for those students to go in. So we're looking forward to how we make sure that things are affordable and accessible for our students. Our partnerships with our local school districts are important. The real bubble right now for this area is in 5th grade. If you look at the enrollments in northern Santa Barbara County, you see a spike at 5th grade, and that's where the kids are coming, and that's 7 years away. So we're trying to get those students college ready, and probably our most innovative program is the one Mark mentioned, the concurrent enrollment. We are now offering concurrent enrollment at every single high school in our district, including St. Joe's. And technically, we're not at Rigetti or Orca yet. We're starting in the spring there, but we'll have programs up and running there. So students there will get high school and college credit concurrently that will go right onto their transcript and help them once they get here.
Thank you, Dr. Walthers. And now to hear a little bit about the perspective on higher education at the state level, we have Carla Castillo here from California State Senator Hanna-Beth Jackson's office.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? It's an honor to be here on behalf of Senator Hanna-Beth Jackson, and I'd like to take a moment to introduce my colleagues because this area is so critical to the senator, and she's invested time and staff to make sure that we cover a lot of territory. So many of you know Joyce Howerton, right back there, and then Stanley Zankoff, who's also in our office. Stanley works on higher education issues in particular, and Joyce, well, she just knows North County like the back of her hand, and I'm sure all of you see her often. Senator Jackson is committed to higher education. In her over 30 years of work, both through the Assembly and the Senate, she really understands that education levels the playing field for all of us. Like Superintendent Cora, I'm actually the first in my family to graduate college, and it's thanks in part to my family, really having a focus on education. But from a bigger perspective, institutionally, we had the support to actually make that happen. And that was because I participated in programs like AVID and EAOPS, which was huge. I actually had an opportunity to spend a week at UCSB as a freshman in high school, and that just blew my mind. I mean, wow, like this could be me. I could go to school in a place like this. How do I do that? And for me, the journey in itself was fun. So Fast forward now to being Senator Jackson's district director and her taking, a chance on a local kid and hiring on to her staff. It's thanks in part because of my educational background and preparedness. And I couldn't have done that without high school counselors, without counselors at my elementary school level, and really the support of my family. So it does, in fact, take a village to help a kid be successful, go from, K through 8, all the way from high school, and then, to have community college there is just this huge safety net. And so the senator is grateful that these partnerships exist at the local level, because when the state can't do the work, we know that it can't stop. Because we're having a recession doesn't mean that students don't stop showing up at the door. No, we still have a population of students we need to educate. And so thank you to all of you for your incredible work and leadership through some of the most difficult economic times that we've seen in recent history. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to Dr. Walthers and Allen Hancock College for hosting this discussion. These forums are so important to actually, discuss the challenges that each of our institutions face as we move forward. And so we thank the League of Women Voters for kicking off a study that's going to really open our eyes to additional details that we're facing in this day and age, and we're really looking forward to seeing that study. I mentioned that the senator believes in quality, accessible, and equitable education. It's critical for the state's well-being, and it levels the playing field. So I can't emphasize that message on her behalf enough. If current trends continue, by 2025, California will have a shortfall of 1 million college graduates. What does that mean? What does that mean for us as a state? What does that mean for the vitality of our economics, and overall our state's well-being? And so how do we protect our pipeline and, our quality education through and through? And again, it's the strong partnerships at the local level that keep things going when we're not cutting it from a fiscal standpoint at the state level. A few statistics that have already been touched on, but that are really important to this discussion. Over the past 20 years, in-state tuition at both the UC and CSUs has more than tripled. I went to college in the 90s. There is no way I could afford to attend a university now. It's just impossible. I mean, back then, we didn't qualify for grants because they hadn't passed the middle class tax credit. And we had to figure it out through loans and credit cards and multiple jobs. But it was an investment that, as a family, we thought was critical and important. So the fact that the cost has tripled, and as you said, how affordable college was for you, Dr. Walthers, that's a safety net that we had at the time and really took for granted, and something that we need to factor in as we're addressing these issues at all levels, including at the state level, because the tools that we have to work with are completely different. So it'd be amazing if we got to a point where we're able to reduce the cost of college, including books, to make this more affordable for students and families, and really for the holistic health of our entire community. Taking institutional grants, scholarships to aid lower income students into account, that is, per student net, has more than doubled between 2002 and 2012. A commonly held perception is that the rise in tuition is due to dramatic increase in institutional costs. However, institutional expenditures, including faculty salaries and benefits, which is the largest part of the budget category, have not increased significantly. Instead, recent tuition increases have been driven by dramatic cuts in state subsidies to both the UCs and CSUs. This has effectively shifted the cost of attending a public university from the state to the student, and really impacting, as we're saying. Students paying full in-state tuition do not pay the full cost of enrollment and instruction. This makes sense considering that we are talking about public higher education. Money from the state general fund covers virtually the rest of this gap. Between 2007 and 2008, and again 2012 and 2013, state appropriations to UC and CSUs fell by $2 billion, from $6.3 billion to $4.3 billion, more than 30%, even as enrollment has increased in our public universities. Per student spending, as was mentioned earlier, has fallen during this period by more than 50%. State funding for UC and CSU students remain near the lowest level in more than 3 decades. While there has been an increase in grant aid from both state and federal government, the majority of students do not receive federal or state grants. And while we work our way out of the recent recession, the recent increases in state funding are relatively small. And the allocation for 2013 and 2014 had an increase of less than 10% per student. And we still have a long ways to make up, especially with the cuts that we faced in 2008 and on. UC and CSUs have responded to this dramatic reduction in state support primarily by increasing tuition. The cuts in some supportive services, including counseling, they have also been forced to make time made it more difficult for students struggling to make their way through colleges and universities. So it just takes more time to get through school, which essentially makes it more expensive. Where you could have finished your degree in 4 years is now taking maybe 5 or more, simply because you can't get the classes that you need in order to graduate within a certain time frame. It's important to note that higher education is particularly vulnerable to budget cuts during economic downturns. Public universities do not have constitutionally protected, dedicated funding like our K-12 education and community college. And even then, we're always at risk of funding being attacked in some way, shape, or form. So as citizens and civically engaged individuals, we really need to be protective of our education institutions at all levels. In addition, like most of us here, this trend is a cause of concern among a majority of Californians. 65% of Californians believe that higher education affordability is a big problem in the state. And that was a poll that the PPIC conducted a statewide service. So, as we're coming out of this recession and we do see improvements, the senator is still very much focused on making sure that her colleagues and partners on the ground have what they need. And there's been so much adjustment over the last 2 years, both with LCFF, the local control funding formula, that's been tricky, and the Common Core standards. And I'm happy to report that she does consult with her local education folks to make sure that she's getting the right information before she makes votes that are going to impact the community. So thank you for always being available to have those conversations. In addition to affordability, another thing that's very critical for student success is campus safety. You need to be able to go to a school and feel safe and know that you can be on campus, study, work, do what you need to do without the fear of assault. For the senator, it is paramount that we not only ensure that people are able to attend college, but that they're safe while doing it. So as you may already know, the senator has been a longtime champion for the elimination of sexual assault culture through her advocacy and legislation, particularly in regards to our epidemic at our institutions of higher learning. There are several bills that she's passed within the last legislative session and the prior to that to protect our students. And a couple of them are as follows. We have Yes Means Yes, which last year the senator authored a bill which made California the first state in the nation to adopt an affirmative consent policy for state colleges. New York followed suit, and now 12 other states and cities are reportedly considering similar laws. SB 695, which is the Yes Means Yes for policy for high school students. This year, Senator co-authored a bill with Senate President Kevin De Leon, which will make California the first state in the nation to incorporate sexual violence and harassment education in high school curricula. And another tool for campuses to keep students accountable is SB 186, which is off-campus sexual assault. The governor has signed the senator's bill to allow community colleges to discipline students for sexual assault violations, even if they are off campus. The senator has always thought that if a community college can already discipline or expel students for plagiarism, they should also be able to discipline or expel students for behavior as serious and egregious as sexual assault. This is particularly important in places such as, universities that share community colleges next door to them, like Isla Vista, where you see students and community college students living next to each other, but being held to different standards. And so this helps level that playing field as well. And in general, California just came out of an economic recession where we were forced to make serious across-the-board cuts. Although we have limited resources, our educational opportunities have been a long-standing priority for Senator Hanna-Beth Jackson. She is deeply committed to fighting for additional resources to ensure our educational excellence. And we're grateful for the opportunity to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castilla. And last but not least, we want to hear from Kionic Hater, who's a former Allen Hancock College Student Body Government Board of Directors, Director of Academic Affairs. Quianna.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to be here and kind of share from a student perspective of accessibility and to a higher education. So a little bit about me. I'm 19. This is my second year at Allen Hancock College. I graduated from Ernest Rickety High School last year, so kind of new at this whole college thing by myself. Growing up, I was raised in a single-parent home, so college really wasn't an option at that time for me. I do have an older brother. He is now at the University of San Francisco. So with him and me, I felt like I was the last totem pole. So he was able to accomplish things that I wasn't able to. But coming to Hancock, I was able to see a lot of the programs that they offered to help, like ELPS and the Bog Waiver, and especially financial aid. I did not know about the Bog Waiver. I did not know about what financial aid was until I came here. And it's actually been really helpful for my first year. This year has been a little bit difficult because of some personal issues, but they're helping me in a way that I'm able to afford my classes, because at the time right now I'm not able to. So with the Bog, I'm able to. With financial aid, with a couple stipulations for myself, I can't do that. So I'm working a full-time job now and going to school full-time. So it's kind of hard to balance it out, but with everything Hancock has offered, especially ASBG, which is Associate Student Body Government, they open your eyes, and we try to show what Hancock can offer, because it is really important that students, not only from here, but at high schools, especially in high school, like, you don't know. You come here and you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to take classes, and then I'm done. You don't see everything else that is involved. And I mean, some of my high school counselors, they did mention a few things, but not as much. But coming here, it's been so far so good. Really great experience being here, able to communicate with my teachers amazingly, and and having the president of the school very student-oriented. He really is about the students, and it shows that just because I'm not able to afford it myself, he's willing to put his neck out there and be like, hey, we got this too, so you can reach your higher goal, reach your higher education, and be able to transfer, because he really does want all his students to transfer out, if they can, and if they want to. But yeah, that's kind of my story and how it is from a student perspective.
Thank you, Ms. Hater. So at this point, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and we will be collecting questions from the audience. And so we have, if you did not get a chance to get some index cards, they're floating around here somewhere, and then we'll be collecting those. And I did want to announce and say thank you to Stephen Pask and Santa Maria Community TV, who's been recording the forum, and this will be on Santa Maria Community TV and on YouTube for folks that weren't able to make it today. So please fill out your cards. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and ask all the tough questions. All right, I think that we are ready to ask the tough questions.
The transfer rate based on first time, fourth time students.
Yeah. And I have a couple for you. So.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so we got a couple questions that are varied in topics, so we try to spread them out so that people have different panelists have the opportunity to speak. Some of these might be directed at one particular person, but then we'll open it up in case there's anybody else that wants to add on. These are all kind of still interrelated.
Can we take do we get like a pass, or can we phone a friend?
I like phone a friend.
Phone a friend?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you all are.
But here's
today.
the kicker, though.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to give everybody a minute to respond. Hopefully that's enough time. And then if you want to phone a neighbor to help you in, you're more than welcome to do that. All right. So the first question we want to ask is around vocational education. Hancock has several great training programs, a variety of career paths and vocations, and if members of the audience want to know, what are the plans now or in the future in terms of vocation. One person specifically wanted to know about expanding to the solar industry, but then just in general, also then the vocational classes in high school. So this, whoever would like to.
That would be me then, right?
High school and then the college.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, I think what we've seen, we talked about 1980, what we've seen in the state of California is a real shift in funding at the state and priority at the state. Because one of the things that the governor, the state board talks about today is not just college education, but career or college education. And so what we all would call vocational education, we call today career technical education. It's really the same stuff with a little bit different twist. And what happened in the state of California was these programs were vibrant programs in the 40s, 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, when educational funding was cut with Prop 13 in the state of California. These programs started to go away because they're expensive to run. I have some firsthand knowledge of this. My dad was the first and only and last shop teacher at the high school where I grew up, because he was hired in 1960 as the shop teacher there in a brand new auto shop. He worked there for 40 years, and by the time he finished his career, they were shutting shop programs down in the state of California. We all know, and we've always all known, we had this conversation earlier, one of the keys to finding out an answer is to ask somebody who actually knows the answer to it and is not speculating on it. But we've all known, and we know people that aren't necessarily interested in going to a four-year university or going to college. They want to learn a skill or a trade, and they want to go to work somewhere. So from a CTE standpoint, we see that as being a big part of what we do going forward, and recognizing that these programs are vital for kids, and that there is funding associated with this going forward, which is going to be a great thing for us.
All right, and we're
Thank you.
time. Awesome. Okay, Dr. Walthers, would you like to?
Yeah, I probably can't do it in a minute either. This is an important issue, and one of the fundamental things that I find most Californians don't understand is how community colleges are funded, and we're funded based on an enrollment goal. Our goal this year is 9,570 students, and the state takes the Prop 13 tax money, and they take some state apportionment money, and they take the fees that are collected, and they put that all into a bundle and send it back to us for 9,570 students. If I enroll more than that, I have to figure out how to manage classes in order to have those students come. There's no additional funding provided for those. So when the budget downturn comes and you start talking to colleges about, we're going to cut this much money out of your budget, where's the first place they look? They look at the expensive programs. They look at the career technical education programs, because I need probably 3 sociology classes for every welding class in order to make the dollars pencil out for that. And this is not uncommon. This is how it works all over the country, except in California and other states, you could go and actually put more sociology and psychology courses on, and those students would pay tuition, and the institution would keep that tuition and then could pay for engineering programs, STEM programs, nursing programs. We can't do that in California, so that's a huge drawback for that. The second part of that, though, is in this district, and this is a real source of pride for us and for our friends from the Senator's office. When you see the task force on workforce development that the community college system has just done, what I've been lobbying for, and several of my colleagues, is there needs to be some recognition that some of us during the downturn did not cut our CTE programs. Some of us held to our mission, and in fact, during the downturn, Allen Hancock College created the Registered Veterinary Technology Program. We recreated the machining program. We hired a welding instructor, and we hired an automotive instructor during the downturn. So now as state funds start to come back as an incentive to restore those programs, we think is critical that for those of us who kept our investment going, that there's some recognition for that, because we have lost opportunity cost over that 5-year period where we actually invested in what our mission says we're supposed to be investing in.
Great, thank you. So speaking of the state, have questions here around Proposition 13. What is it, the status, thoughts, and how it impacts all the schools, and also Prop 30. It's expiring. What is the replacement? Is there any other legislation, or how do you all feel in terms of the schools and how these propositions impact funding to your schools?
Sure, I can start with that. Prop 13, as we've just heard, is so critical to the funding of our educational institutions, particularly the community colleges. In 1978, the law reduced California residential and commercial property taxes to 1% of their 1975 value and restricted annual increases in assessed property values to 2% per year. So I think that's interesting because that impacted the vocational and CTE type funding. So Prop 13 likely played a significant role in the decline of the state's educational equality. In 1978, California ranked 21st in the nation on spending per student. Today, California ranks 46th in spending per student. So now there's an effort to reform Prop 13, which will be on the 2016 ballot. I know talking about reform of Prop 13 can be a little scary because we know that it protects a lot of residents, that are individual homeowners. But part of this reform is really looking at the areas such as commercial property and other things that have changed hands over time and haven't necessarily increased, where needed. It is estimated that reforming the commercial property tax system would raise up to $9 billion of additional revenues each year. Not all of this would go toward education, but it's significant. Likely around $2 billion would be proportioned. So that's part of what's going on with Prop 13.
Great, thanks. Anybody else want to talk about Prop 13 or Prop 30 or?
If I can, the Prop 30, I'll say this much. The additional funding coming into schools is critical. You've got small districts like Guadalupe who we receive our funding from the state, but the additional funding is extremely critical. When I think about the possibility of that money going away, we will lose some programs. So, but we'll see what happens if they come up with something else.
Great.
We took out an ad, not an ad, in our community news where we dedicated a half page to how important Prop 30 was to the college and what it did for us. So we're very grateful that the voters approved that. On the other side of it, I spent 7 years working in the legislative budget office in Utah, and what I learned is I don't care where the dollars come from. I just need to be able to tell the legislature and the governor, this is how much it costs to educate a student, and this is what our needs are, and then that's it's their job to figure out how to pay for that. So we try not to get in too involved in where the dollars come from. Just we want to make sure we have adequate funds to serve our students.
Great, thank you. All right, so next question is for Quianna, and opening it up to the rest of the group too. Quianna, the folks here want to know if you could tell them a little bit more about the BOG program and what it is, and then also I had questions about student aid. Were the FAFSA forms difficult to fill out, and if anybody else can talk about the red tape and the forms, all those things.
Okay. Well, the Bog Waiver is I forgot the acronym. But it's a waiver for students that can't afford to pay for their classes. It's available all throughout California. And there's certain levels of Bog Waiver. There's Bog A, Bog B, Bog C. Am I right, Dr. Walthers?
Sure.
Okay.
You're phoning a friend.
Yeah. And like I said, it's pretty much so that if you can't afford to pay for your classes at this time, they waive your fees. So this semester I wasn't able to afford my classes, so I applied and successfully I was accepted, so they paid for my classes. And for FAFSA, in some ways it was somewhat difficult because I didn't know what I was doing at the time, except for just filling out my personal information. Other than that, I had my mom help me most of the time. But yeah.
Do you think there are some things maybe that could help you and other folks to make it easier to fill out the forms? And then if anybody else wants to add after that.
I think for me personally, maybe starting at the high school level, because they somewhat explained it, but they didn't show us in a way. So they didn't sit down and be like, okay, well, you need this and this and this. Because there was some documents I didn't even know that we needed. So maybe starting like when the Hancock comes over, they can sit down and kind of explain, because I know they came for a workshop when I was in high school.
Does anybody else want to add anything?
I'd like to give kudos to Dr. Walthers and the Allen Hancock College staff, because they have a couple of meetings that they come out to Guadalupe that's well publicized to help students who are ready to apply at our junior high school. We open it up for a couple of evenings, and they get assistance filling out the forms there.
Great. All right. This next question is about technology. How much of a role does technology play in your classrooms or school districts currently? And what do you think the future of technology and the impact of accessibility and affordability will be for students? That's open to anybody.
What if I I'll start the little ones, kindergarten through 8th grade, and we'll work our way up, and I'll keep it to a minute. We are trying to become Mark said a one-to-world. We still call it a one-to-one school district, which means our goal is to get a piece of technology in the hands of every single child. We don't have the funding to do it all at once, but we're looking at getting Google Chromebooks. So right now we're getting them in sets of 35. The junior high school, I think we have 6 sets. At the elementary school, I think we have about 5 sets, and we're working each year to try and get more of those sets. Because, as you know, and it's not only Google Chromebooks, and Google Chromebook is like a laptop, but just about everybody's using technology all the time. As a matter of fact, you ask students, if there's something they don't know, what do? They Google it. It's a phrase now, Google it. But technology is a huge part of education. It's going to become even more so as the years go on. And it's our job. As a matter of fact, when I think about what we're educating our students for now, we don't even know some of the jobs that are going to exist in the near future. By the time our kindergartners become young adults, we have no idea the type of jobs that are out there. But it's our job to try and keep up with it the best we can.
Thanks, Ed. I think you pretty much said what I was going to say. Keep copying me today. I think that, the one thing we know about technology is going to continue to change. And if when you look at an institution like ours where, we have 400 to 450 teachers on campuses working with technology and how that's used in the classroom, it's going to be on a continuum. Because you're going to have some people that are going to really dive into that, and they are comfortable with it, and they're going to use it and just push it out to the limits of its ability. And you're going to have some that aren't going to use it so much. But I think, as Ed said, there's nothing you can do today that doesn't involve technology. And if we're not interested in helping students to be able to access that and learn how to utilize it properly and to their advantage, and we're waiting on everybody to catch up, then we're never going to teach the kids anything, because you're never going to get totally caught up on it. I think from a device standpoint, we know that devices are going to change as we go forward. It seems like everything today gets smaller and less expensive, so I'm hoping for that as we move forward. But again, I think investing in that for our students and exposing them to that is a very positive thing. We did roll out our one-to-one initiative in the district. We started last spring. There was a level of concern initially about how are the kids going to learn it? How are the kids going to learn it? You know what? The kids learn it. The kids get it, right? It's us old folks that go, oh, what is that? And I was like, my kids are out of the house now, and I mean, it was great having them around because if something was messed up with my phone, I'd just call one of them into the room and give it to them and say, hey, fix this for me, right? And then they'd fix it and give it back to me where I could use it. So, I think it's great. As said, I think the more access we can provide to kids in a quality way, the better off we're going to be in the future.
Great, thank you.
For us, I'm going to take a little different tact on it. We're pretty good with the technology. Our students could certainly use more home access, but we've actually used some of our funds from the state and the categorical funds to expand lab hours and library hours so students have access to the computer. So we're making an investment in that. The real cost, and these guys didn't say it, but there's a real cost to us just to keep up with our enterprise systems. That's the real struggle that we have when you start to think about the licensing costs and the upgrades. As more and more accountability measures come in, we need to have more and more sophisticated systems just to run the institution. We're actually sort of fortunate that the pace of change with personal devices has slowed to a point where you can actually have a device last for 3 or 4 years, and the software is now written to be across multiple devices. So I think the personal technology, I think all of us are doing pretty well on that. We really struggle with how do we keep our enterprise systems up and running and as modern as they can be.
Senator Jackson is a big proponent of utilizing technology in and out of the classroom. And as a matter of fact, to encourage the use of it, as Dr. Richardson was saying, sometimes there's resistance, to implementing it because I think for adults it's harder. When I went to school, I still had a catalog to enroll in my classes and use a phone system to input, the 16-digit class ID. And now you literally can enroll in your quarter or semester classes in less than 5 minutes. And that wasn't the case back when, so I can only imagine. So the senator recently participated in a Google Hangout with a group of educators. It was about 400 educators, and the whole point that the superintendent wanted to make is that, look, if our state senator will, reach us by Google Hangout to say hello, this is something that we can utilize, a one-to-world concept, because you're able to access so much. I've seen other school districts as well, be able to communicate with classrooms, in other countries and utilize blogs. Obviously, there's protection and safety issues and parameters that need to be put in place, but as a whole, there's just a whole world of opportunity with technology. And as Superintendent Cora said, we don't even know what jobs we're preparing for, but we know that technology is at the center of it. So Senator Jackson's a big proponent of leveraging and utilizing technology in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. And then coming from a student perspective, that's all we're all about. You go into class, you see students with their laptops, their tablets, their iPads, and that's just how we communicate with our teachers nowadays. Email. All they say is email. You go on your Blackboard, which is where a lot of our teachers post their assignments, their syllabus. If we're going to have a test that day, what the test is going to be about, that's all we're on. You see people on their phones because we're looking and we're like, okay, did our teacher email us this or did they do this? But that's just how we communicate nowadays. Even in high school, that's all they were about was technology and how to keep coming and going with the flow, because every other day it's something new.
Great,
If
thank
I
you.
can, Cristina, very quickly. I'm actually trying to stay up with technology. I just started this year tweeting. So if you go to our homepage, on our district homepage, I told myself 1 tweet a week about good things that are happening in the school district.
Shamelessly plugging yourself up here.
Great, thank
This
you.
is not a commercial thing.
I just heard him say that he's keeping up with technology by using something from 2006.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Yeah, we're on a plane, yeah. So, no, great, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to continue. So one last question we're going to squeeze in before we call it a day today. Ms. Castilla mentioned, right, that it takes a village, that there's lots of different components and stakeholders to the successful education of a student. And we want to know what are some of your thoughts on involving parents in supporting students' education, especially parents that don't speak English. And this can, one or two people can answer.
You want to go? I'll go. Well, I think it kind of dovetails into what we talked about before. I think what we have in our district is a lot of parents that are really interested in getting engaged, but they don't know how to get engaged. And they need to be taught how to get engaged because they didn't come up through our system. And that creates issues for us, but they're not issues that can't be overcome. We've invested a lot of resource towards doing translations, translating our documents. As you'll see with our strategic plan, it's in English and in Spanish. We have a large Mixteco population that doesn't have a written language. And working with parents and teaching them about our system, I think, is very important. We talked about the state funding model a little bit earlier. The local control funding formula and the LCAP plan, the local control accountability plan, mandates parent involvement and mandates involvement of EL parent groups, English language parent groups. And I think as many people as we can have at the table contributing to the discussion, just like we had here today, the better the outcome's going to be. So getting people engaged in the process is very important. I just think nowadays we need to do it a little bit differently than we did when my mom and dad came to the PTA meeting in 1975. It's a different situation now than it was before, but it doesn't mean that people don't want to get engaged. It just means they need a little bit more help in getting connected up.
Thank you. Anybody else?
That's true. As a matter of fact, I remember when my daughters came here, I wanted to speak to somebody. My daughters remind me, parents can. So you're right. I will say this. Everybody knows there's a triangle. You have the student, the school, and the parent or parents. And it's vital that we include them in as many ways as possible. Just this year we hired from the Family Service Center, there was Alma Hernandez-Wilson, who used to work for Community Action Commission. I saw the importance of pulling her underneath the umbrella of the school district, so we hired her, and her sole job is to work with parents and the families out there in the Family Student Service Center. So bringing parents in, communicating with them, sending out your newsletters, tweets, in whatever way that you can get them in. And I know Mark will agree with me on this. The hard part is when you have those parent meetings, how do you get parents to actually come in to hear the information that we feel is important? Food, or providing their children presenting some type of activity, whether it's a performance, that'll get them there. But it's our job, how do we reach out to them in whatever way possible? And the more different ways that we reach out to them, the more likely we will be reaching them in some way or another. But they're vital to be included in child's education.
Great. Anybody else?
Senator agrees that parent involvement is critical and is a piece that needs to be there. And if it's not the parent, then it's the caring adult that's around the student or helping support the student. Our households look so different. We have traditional households that run the gamut, both in how many generations live in a house to, the parental situation. And I'm just really excited and comforted to hear that, the school districts here are using different ways to engage the parents to participate, because it's not easy, but food does work. It especially works for me.
Great. Anybody else? All right. Well, then, that concludes our forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Santa Maria Valley, I want to thank the panelists. We can give them a round of applause. And we also want to thank the attendees. So panelists, if you want to give them a round of applause. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for those of you watching on community television. And thank you to the Higher Education Committee that's working on this. And a special thank you to Dr. Walthers for working with us to make this happen here at Allen Hancock College. I want to remind you of a future League event. We have a forum on water here locally on Thursday, October 22nd at the Government Center. You can find us on the web at lwvsmv.org or Facebook, maybe in the future on Twitter. Today, just to want to remind you, if you don't know already, September 22nd is National Register to Vote Day. So if you haven't registered or you moved, today would be a great day to do that. So happy National Register to Vote Day, and I hope everyone has a nice evening.
Thank you all for coming, too. Appreciate it.